He looked straight into a beautiful dark-skinned woman's eyes, on his own live stream, with his own camera in his hand, and he told her, with the whole planet watching in real time, that her mind was small because her skin was rich. And then, fam, Blueface leaned forward, ordered his driver to slow down on the black shoulder of a 4 a.m. highway, and he removed that woman from the vehicle like she was a receipt he was done reading. And here is the piece I need every person watching to sit with before we move one sentence further. Blueface filmed all of it himself. He pressed the record button. He held the camera steady. He genuinely believed with his whole chest, that when the internet finally saw this footage, the internet would stand up and applaud him. Beloved, Blueface was wrong in a way historians will have to invent a new word for, and by the time this breakdown is done, you will understand why every second of what Blueface broadcast is now a masterclass in how colorism, a brittle ego, and a real-world safety emergency can collide inside one moving vehicle in 90 minutes. Lock in with me. Silence your notifications. Turn the volume up until your neighbors get involved. What unfolded inside that car is not celebrity gossip. This is a case file. This is a warning shot. And this may be the most self-incriminating piece of tape a modern rapper has ever voluntarily uploaded with his own 2 hands. If you are new here, this is where we do celebrity accountability the honest way, receipts first, feelings acknowledged, verdict last, never anything we cannot back with the artist's own footage. If that is the frequency you need on your feed, tap that like, hit subscribe, and flip that bell on, because we are about to walk through this collision frame by frame, word by word, exit ramp by exit ramp, and Blueface handed us more evidence than any prosecutor could pray for. Let me sketch the scene using only the verified layout, because in a story like this the details are the difference between rumor and record. According to the very stream Blueface pushed out to his audience, the night began inside a club. He crossed paths with a young woman moving through the room with a small group of friends. And witnesses watching his own broadcast saw, in real time, the exact instant he was struck by her, visibly, embarrassingly captivated. A man losing his composure over a gorgeous woman is the oldest chapter in the oldest book on earth. There was a universe in which Blueface stepped up, said something warm and human, and the night ended in laughter. That universe existed for maybe 15 seconds. Because instead of telling this woman she was beautiful, full stop, sentence complete, he reached for a different sentence. On camera, in front of her friends, in a club full of noise, he began marveling at how stunning she was, and here is the phrase that turned the night into a case file, for a dark-skinned girl. He called her, in his own words, a good dark skin. He said it more than once. He said it proudly. He said it like he was pinning a medal onto her chest. And beloved, I need you to freeze that moment with me, because the rest of this story is downstream of that single sentence. When the woman heard that so-called compliment, she did not smile. She did not thank him. She did not perform gratitude for the celebrity holding the microphone. She did not do the thing every woman in that room had been socially trained to do. She paused. She looked at him. And she asked the question that would eventually land her on the shoulder of a highway hours later. She asked him, calmly and clearly, with her whole chest, "What do you mean by that?" Stay with me, because I know a slice of the audience is warming up their fingers to type. It was a compliment, she overreacted, he called her beautiful, what more could she want? To that slice I say only this, keep watching. Because we are about to run the full educational breakdown on why that specific phrasing carries a 400-year-old wound stitched into every syllable, and by the end of this video you will view this footage with completely different eyes. Here is what Blueface never understood, here is what his defense collapses without, here is the beating heart of the entire broadcast. There is a canyon between telling a woman she is beautiful and telling a woman she is beautiful for her category. One is a compliment. The other is a confession. And this 21-year-old woman, standing in a loud club under bad lighting, heard the confession the instant it left Blueface's mouth. She recognized it. She refused to swallow it. And Blueface, this is the tragic pivot of the whole story, decided her refusal to be flattered was a declaration of war. What happens next, inside that car, on that highway, is where the story pivots from a bad compliment into something darker. We will break down the exact argument sentence by sentence. We will walk into the moment a phone dictionary got weaponized. We will stop the tape at the precise second the car slowed on a pitch-black stretch of road. And then we will sit with the rant Blueface delivered to his own lens after she was already out of the vehicle. Every layer is worse than the one before. Do not scroll away. Let me rewind to the club, because I want to reconstruct the original spark the way crash investigators reconstruct a wreck, inch by inch, in slow motion, without the noise. The footage shows Blueface stepping to this woman with obvious enthusiasm. He tells her he likes her skin. He tells her she looks nice. And then he keeps talking, and this is exactly where the night starts leaking oxygen, because he cannot let the sentence end. He has to file her first. You look nice, that dark skin. This right here is a good dark skin. Look at the grammar with me. She is not a woman in that construction. She is a specimen inside a category. She is a well-graded example from a group. And when she reasonably follows up, what do you mean by good? Watch what he cannot do. He cannot define the word. He repeats it like the word is a self-explaining fact. Because in his head, it is. The ranking is so factory installed, so unquestioned, that being asked to explain it is the odd part. That single pause is the entire problem in miniature. The hierarchy is so baked into him that he experiences the question as the strange thing, not the sentence that provoked it. And I have to give you the history, because this did not start with Blueface and will not stop with him unless we look at where it came from. Colorism inside our community is not a personality quirk. It is an inheritance. It descends directly from a plantation logic that assigned value, labor, and proximity to freedom based on shade. It was enforced through paper bag tests at social clubs. It was rehearsed through a century of film and television that cast lighter skin as the default love interest. It was industrialized by a global beauty market that sold the promise that lighter was aspirational. By the time a sentence like, "You are beautiful for a dark-skinned girl," reaches a grown man's mouth in 2026, that sentence has traveled through 4 centuries of machinery designed to make it feel like generosity when it lands. That is why this young woman's refusal matters so much. She was not just correcting one rapper on one night. She was interrupting a broadcast 400 years long, and she did it without ever raising her voice. That is also why the "it was just a compliment" defense collapses the second you press it with a fingertip of pressure. A real compliment does not require a category. Nobody says, "You are smart for a woman," and calls it flattery with a straight face. Nobody tells another human being, "You are articulate for your kind," and waits for a thank you. The qualifier is not the wrapping paper. The qualifier is the whole package. It tells the person receiving it that the speaker holds a mental scale, that her people sit at the bottom, and that she has just been handed a temporary exception. What she heard in that club was not praise. She heard the scale. And every dark-skinned woman watching this footage right now heard it too, which is why the response online has been less like gossip and more like a collective exhale of recognition. Now lock in with me, because before we step into the vehicle we have to run the educational deep dive, since half the comment sections arguing about this footage are arguing about a word they cannot define. Colorism is not simply noticing that skin tones exist. Colorism is a hierarchy, born on the plantation, refined through colonization, still humming underneath our casting rooms, our music videos, our club entrances, and yes, the compliment Blueface tried to hand out. Under that hierarchy, light skin is the factory setting for beauty, and dark skin is the exception that has to be explained, excused, or apologized for. That is the machine running quietly in the background of every second of Blueface's stream. So when a man looks at a dark-skinned woman and reacts with surprise that she is attractive, when the compliment only makes grammatical sense if dark skin is supposed to be ugly first, that is not flattery. That is the hierarchy speaking through his mouth. You are pretty, despite. You are gorgeous, in spite of. You are a good one, considering. Every dark-skinned woman watching Blueface has heard some version of that sentence her whole life, and that is why the timeline detonated the moment his stream dropped. The insult was not just in the words. It was in the assumption sitting underneath them like foundation concrete. And notice something crucial about how this young woman actually responded. She did not curse Blueface out. She did not perform outrage for the camera. She did not weaponize her volume. In the footage she tries, calmly, repeatedly, with the patience of a teacher, to explain to Blueface why what he said landed as a wound. She hands him a real working definition of shade-based discrimination inside the community. She tells him, plainly, this is something she has lived, not something she scrolled past on an app. She showed up with scholarship in one hand and lived experience in the other, and delivered both with more grace than the moment ever earned back. Which brings us into the psychology of the car ride, because after the club this young woman and her friends ended up inside the vehicle with Blueface and his crew, and this is where a bruised ego turned into a full trial. Instead of letting the moment breathe, he reopened the wound. On camera he starts mocking her, calling her, in his exact words, a beautiful problem. He starts pressing her. Why are you offended? What does colorist even mean? Define it. Define it right now. Define it in front of everyone. And when you watch the footage closely, this is the tell, he is not asking to learn. He is asking to humiliate. Every question is a trap door beneath her feet. He wants her to stumble in front of her friends so he can reclaim the status he lost the second she refused to be flattered. And this is where the night takes its sharpest, most absurd left turn, because when the woman challenges him to look the definition up, somebody inside that car actually does, and reads out loud the wrong entry. Out loud, at full volume, with total confidence, the entire car hears that a colorist is, quote, a professional or artist who works with color. Like a hairdresser. Like a painter. Like a home improvement contractor. And instead of one adult inside that vehicle raising a hand and saying, hold on, that is obviously the wrong definition, the whole car erupts. Blueface latches onto that wrong definition like a drowning man grabbing driftwood, screaming that she has been lied to, that she got everything she knows from Instagram, that she is too young to know a single thing. Sit with how revealing that moment is. A grown man, a charting rapper with millions of followers, is so desperate to defeat a 21-year-old in an argument that he will write a hairdresser's job description into battle before he admits she is right. You could not script a more perfect metaphor if you tried for a year. He would sooner redefine the English language than be corrected by the dark-skinned woman he had just called gorgeous. But the woman does not fold. And this is the part that matters most, she keeps going. She pivots from colorism to racism, drawing the academic distinction that racism involves prejudice reinforced by power, and that is the exact moment the car fully detonates. Voices pile on top of voices. The music gets turned off, then up, then off again, and pay close attention to that detail, because whoever controls the music in that vehicle controls whether her voice reaches the microphone. Every time her argument gains altitude, somebody reaches for that volume knob like a weapon. Every time her point lands, somebody shouts across it. The whole vehicle becomes a single machine with a single purpose, make this woman stop talking. She does not stop talking. And beloved, that is the exact second Blueface stops arguing. Because when a man cannot beat a woman's argument, and he cannot survive the sound of her voice, there is only one card left in his hand, power. Raw, physical, you are in my vehicle power. And that is the card Blueface reached for. Watch how the escalation sequences, because the order matters, and I need you to see this order the way a detective sees a crime scene timeline. First, the mockery sharpens, he calls her young, he calls her stupid, he reaches for the B word like it is basic punctuation, tossing it into the middle of sentences like a comma. Then comes the dismissal of her right to speak inside the vehicle at all. Then comes the group pile-on, the crew audio ambush, the volume knob turning into a muzzle. And then, the moment that separates a toxic argument from a genuine, real-world safety emergency, he issues the order. Pull over. Pull over right now. Get her out of the car. Understand the physical geometry of that instruction. It is 4 in the morning. This is not a downtown street with open storefronts and warm streetlights. This is a highway. Darkness on every side. Cars at highway speed. No sidewalk. No shelter. And this grown man looks at a woman who out-argued him and decides the correct penalty for her intelligence is abandonment on asphalt in the dark. Let me be precise, because precision is the whole point of this channel. When the vehicle stops, this young woman does not beg to stay. She does not perform smallness. She gathers what remains of the night's dignity and gets out. And there is a detail inside the footage people online have not stopped talking about, one of her friends gets out with her. Do not let that detail blur past you. In a car full of people performing loyalty to a celebrity, one young woman chose her friend over the room. On the shoulder of a highway, in the dark, at 4 in the morning, she said, with her entire body, if she is out then I am out. There was more integrity in that single choice than in the whole rest of the vehicle combined. But Blueface? He was not done. This is where the story leaves the neighborhood of bad and moves into unforgivable. Because most men, even the worst ones, would have driven away in silence at that point. He picked the camera right back up. With the woman he had just been calling beautiful now standing outside in the dark, he began a rant for his audience, mocking her friend, laughing about how fast her, quote, dumb self got out of the vehicle, announcing to his stream that she serves no purpose. And then he said the line. The line that will follow him from this night until the last day of his public career. The line that took every argument that woman made inside the vehicle and proved her right in 5 syllables. He looked straight into his own lens, about the same woman, and said, quoted directly from his own broadcast, "You so dark, you dumb." Read that back. Do not scroll past it. Do not soften it. Do not translate it into something more polite than what left his mouth. You so dark, you dumb. He did not say she was wrong. He did not say she was rude. He did not say she was annoying. He did not even say she was ungrateful. He drew a straight, clean, unmistakable line between the depth of her complexion and the capacity of her mind, on camera, voluntarily, with a smile on his face and the record button still glowing red. Every single thing she had spent an hour trying to teach him about how dark skin gets coded as inferior, Blueface stood up in his own vehicle and confirmed it with his whole chest. She built the case. He walked into the courtroom and delivered the closing argument against himself. Prosecutors dream about defendants this cooperative for their entire careers. Here's the question I need parked in your chest as we keep moving. If this is what he says about dark-skinned women when he is attracted to them, on camera, knowing the whole internet is watching, what gets said when the cameras are off? Blueface has built a public persona adjacent to black women's attention, black women's aesthetics, black women's emotional labor, and in one unguarded minute he showed the world the wiring underneath all of it. The mask did not slip. He took the mask off and waved it around like a flag. Now let me talk about what happened the second the footage hit the timeline, because the reaction autopsy is almost as diagnostic as the incident itself. Within hours the clips were everywhere, the exit off the highway, the dictionary fumble, and of course the 5-syllable confession. The discourse split into 3 species of response. First, the accountability wave, overwhelmingly women, overwhelmingly dark-skinned women, saying, "We have been telling you this is what it sounds like, and now you have heard it from the source, in his own voice, on his own camera." For that wave, this was not gossip. This was documentation. Second, the defense wave, and their arguments were remarkably consistent. She knew what kind of night this was, she got in the car anyway, she was combative, it was a compliment. Notice the common thread, every one of those arguments audits her conduct and never audits his. She is graded. He is assumed. That is the same hierarchy from the club, wearing a comments section as a costume. And third, the meme wave, people who turned a woman standing on asphalt in the dark into a punchline before sunrise. When the joke is a young woman on the side of a highway, the joke is on us. And here is the closing forensic observation before we get to the lesson. Go back and count how many times, across the entire stream, anyone in that vehicle, including Blueface himself, actually engages with the substance of her argument. I will save you the rewind. The answer is almost never. They argue about her age. They argue about her tone. They argue about the music. They argue about who is allowed to talk and when. They put her manner on trial while her thesis sits on the table untouched, because the thesis was correct and every person in that car knew it. You do not turn a stereo up on an argument you are winning. You do not stop the vehicle on a debate you are winning. Every escalation on that footage is a confession dressed up as noise, and by the time the taillights vanished down that highway, the only thing left standing in the dark was the point she had been making the whole time. And while we are talking about the vocabulary of that night, let me place one more tactic on the exhibit table, the age card. Every time her argument tightened the screws, out came the age card. You are 21, you were born in 2005, you do not know anything about history. That move is not a counterargument. It is an emergency exit. When a man cannot touch the substance of what a woman is saying, he reaches for the one thing about her she cannot change, her birth year, and tries to make her identity the offense instead of his behavior. But here is the irony the whole internet noticed at once. The 21-year-old was the only person in that vehicle who could correctly define any of the terms being debated. The self-appointed elders in the car were confusing colorism with cosmetology while lecturing her about books they had never opened. Age was never the real gap. The real gap was between the person who had lived the lesson and the people who had only ever been the lesson's beneficiaries. And since receipts are the whole point of this channel, let me put this night on the timeline where it belongs, because Blueface did not accidentally end up on this highway. Blueface is an artist whose public record, the live-stream spectacles, the loop of toxic relationships, the steady conversion of the women around him into revenue-generating content, has been documented for years in real time by his own cameras. Nobody had to dig for the pattern. Blueface uploads the pattern. That is what makes this incident feel less like a scandal and more like a milestone. The moment the chaos Blueface usually points at his private life got aimed, at highway speed, at a stranger whose only weapon was a working definition. The destination was always going to be something like this. The only surprise is that Blueface drove himself there and live-streamed the whole trip. Now let us address the defense, because one was offered, loudly, inside that vehicle, by Blueface and the voices around him. It went like this: she said goodbye to me and then she got into my car anyway. She was being distracting. She wanted to party with us all night. On the surface, a certain kind of viewer nods along to that. So let us take that defense seriously for exactly as long as it deserves. Even if every word of it is true, even if she shook Blueface's hand, said good night, and still climbed into the vehicle, what follows from that? She accepted a ride from a celebrity at the end of a night out, which happens in every city in America every weekend. Nothing about accepting a ride is a signed contract that a man may then insult her complexion, interrogate her intelligence, weaponize a phone dictionary against her, and deposit her on a highway shoulder the moment she objects. A car ride is not a consent form for degradation. The invitation to sit inside a vehicle does not transfer ownership of her dignity to the driver. Notice the asymmetry. Her alleged offense was social clumsiness. His response was endangerment. Those two things do not live on the same continent, and anyone equating them is telling you something about themselves. That brings us into the aftermath, because the story did not end on that shoulder. The footage spread everywhere. Blogs picked it up. Reaction channels picked it up. The discourse forked into two camps: the camp that watched a man endanger a woman over an intellectual disagreement and named it plainly, and the camp performing gymnastics elaborate enough to qualify for an Olympic panel. The woman at the center of it, by the way, has carried herself since with the same composure she showed inside the vehicle: no crash out, no clout chase, no monetized victim tour. She let the tape do the speaking. The tape is eloquent enough. But if we are going to be forensic about this, we have to ask the deeper question, the one buried underneath the definitions and the shouting: why did this specific woman trigger this specific reaction? He has argued with people before. He has been disagreed with before. His public life is essentially a museum of televised conflict. But watch the tape one more time and tell me what is different. I see a man visibly, publicly struck by a woman who, by the aesthetic he has spent his whole career platforming, was not supposed to affect him this way. The attraction confused him. And then, when he reached for the only compliment his vocabulary could actually build, the one with the asterisk, the exception clause, she declined it. She did not just decline it. She graded it, in public, in real time. And a man whose entire persona is built on dominance cannot metabolize being graded by the person he had decided needed his approval. So what poured out of him on that highway had almost nothing to do with definitions. It was about a hierarchy he believed in, functioning correctly right up until the moment it stopped functioning. She was supposed to be flattered. She was supposed to be grateful. Instead she was unimpressed, articulate, and immovable, and the operating system in his head had no script prepared for that. So he defaulted to the oldest script there is: if you cannot win her, punish her. If you cannot match her, exile her. Put her out on the road, tell the camera she is nothing, because the alternative, admitting that a 21-year-old with a rich complexion and a sharper vocabulary had his number all night, was unthinkable. And beloved, this is the part where I have to speak directly to the culture, because this video is not just about one man's conduct on one night. Blueface is not an anomaly inside a system. Blueface is a pattern with a record deal. And the pattern survives only because it keeps getting fed. Look at the whole board honestly. Blueface is a public figure whose brand has been built, year after year, on chaotic relationships, televised dysfunction, and the steady conversion of black women's proximity into content revenue. None of it is new. None of it is hidden. He has shown the world his operating manual more times than any of us can count. And yet the access keeps flowing. The invitations keep arriving. The vehicles keep filling up. Here is the hard truth somebody has to say out loud with love in their throat. At a certain point, the question stops being why does he keep doing this, and starts being why do we keep making this a business model that survives contact with sunlight. Every clipped scandal, every monetized meltdown, every door that reopens teaches the same lesson to every man watching, that there is no real floor. That you can tell a dark-skinned black woman she is dumb because of her complexion, on camera, with your own hand on the record button, and the algorithm will pay you for the views by breakfast. So this is the line in the sand moment. The culture has to stop extending unlimited backstage passes to men who have documented, over and over again, exactly who they are. Not out of cruelty. Out of arithmetic. Access is a resource. Attention is a currency. Safety is not something we barter with. When someone shows you that a disagreement about a single word ends with a woman on the shoulder of a highway, you believe the demonstration. You do not wait for the sequel. There is always a sequel. Now, I promised you the complete picture, so we are going all the way to the bottom. There is one more layer almost nobody is discussing, and it reveals the ecosystem. The vehicle was full, and almost nobody in it helped her. Go back and count the voices. You will hear mockery. You will hear pile on. You will hear people scrambling for their phones to find a dictionary, not to locate the truth, but ammunition. What you will barely hear is a single adult voice saying, "Hold on, this is wrong, stop the car, this has gone too far." One friend got out. One. Everybody else inside that vehicle made a quiet calculation that their seat in a celebrity's car was worth more than a stranger's safety on a dark road, and I want every person watching to sit for a second with how normal that calculation felt in the moment. That is exactly how this stuff actually works in real life. It is not cartoon villains. It is a car full of ordinary people quietly deciding that being near fame matters more than being on the right side of a moment. The highway did not just expose Blueface that night. It exposed the whole ecosystem around him, the crew, the hangers-on, the culture of yes and yes again, and that ecosystem is the entire reason men like this never have to grow up. And one more thing about that ecosystem, this is not even the first time Blueface has been at the center of a national conversation about how the women around him get treated. His public history with toxic relationships has been documented, streamed, clipped, and monetized for years. Every chapter ends the same way, outrage, a week of discourse, and then the audience quietly wanders back, because the spectacle is addictive and accountability is boring television. That cycle is the real antagonist of this story. The highway incident is just the newest exhibit in a gallery that should have closed its doors a long time ago. Blueface stream is not a career at this point. It is a rolling confession booth. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a young woman who walked into a situation engineered to shrink her and walked out, literally, out of the vehicle, onto the asphalt, with her dignity intact. It leaves us with a friend whose loyalty outshone every famous name in that car. It leaves us with a phone dictionary that was weaponized and still lost. And it leaves us with one man, one camera, and 5 syllables that confirmed everything his critic had spent the night saying about him. The footage was supposed to be Blueface's victory lap. Instead it became the evidence file. Now let me pull the lens back, because there is a reason this specific clip detonated the way it did, and it lives beyond one rapper and one highway. This footage landed inside a much older, much deeper conversation, one dark-skinned women in particular have been trying to have out loud for generations. The conversation about who gets called beautiful without a footnote. The conversation about why, in 2026, a grown man with a platform still experiences a gorgeous dark-skinned woman as a plot twist. Every black woman watching knows what I mean, because the compliment with an asterisk is not rare. It is Tuesday. It shows up at the cookout, in the office, on the dating app, inside the lyrics of the song playing in that same club. What made this night different is that she pushed back, on camera, and the camera kept rolling until the mask came all the way off his face. And that is why her composure across this entire situation matters so much. Think about what she actually did. She heard a backhanded compliment and named it, calmly. She was challenged to define her terms and she defined them, accurately, under live fire. She was shouted down, talked over, drowned out by a car stereo used as a weapon, and never once matched the chaos around her. She was called young, called stupid, called a problem, and her answer, every time, was more argument, more clarity, more spine. Even at the end, standing outside that car in the dark. There is no footage of her begging, no footage of her breaking. The final image of her in this saga is a young woman refusing to shrink. That is not a victim's highlight reel. That is a portrait of the strength men like this find intolerable, because it cannot be flattered, cannot be managed, cannot be owned. And to the young men watching, because you are part of this story too, there was a version of this night in which Blueface walks out looking like a king. All he had to do was listen. When a woman tells you your compliment landed wrong, that is not an attack. That is a gift. That is a person handing you a map of her world and saying, do better and I will meet you there. The strong move was curiosity. The strong move was, tell me more, I did not know that, I hear you. Masculinity was never the thing under threat inside that vehicle. The only thing under threat was a brittle little ego that could not survive being taught something new by a woman it had already ranked as beneath it. Real confidence would have made him the hero of his own footage. Instead Blueface chose the highway, and now the footage owns him forever. Let me bring this all the way home, family, because we open with a man confident enough to film his own conduct, and we close with the internet grading the footage he thought would clear his name. The verdict is in, not from me, from the record itself. The record says a woman was handed an asterisk compliment and refused to say thank you for it. The record says she explained herself clearly and calmly while a vehicle of grown adults searched for the wrong dictionary entry and declared victory anyway. The record says the music got turned up every time her argument got sharper. The record says when words failed Blueface, mileage replaced them, a dark highway, 4 in the morning, 2 young women on the shoulder. And the record says that with the camera rolling and the world as his audience, he drew a hard line between the depth of a woman's skin and the worth of her mind. She told him what colorism was. Then he showed us. Case closed by the defendant. Now I want to hear from you, because the comments are where this family does its best work. First question, is there any version of, you are beautiful for a dark-skinned girl, that is not an insult, or is the qualifier always the confession? Give me your verdict below. Second question, the people who stayed in that car. Are they bystanders, or does staying seated make you a co-author of the harm? I want to know where you draw that line. And third, the one I want your thoughts on the most, the friend who stepped out onto that highway with her. Is that the standard of loyalty every one of us should be holding, or is the real problem that it ever had to reach a highway in the first place? Give me your verdict, case file or clout chase, you call it, because this conversation matters more than the man who started it. And listen, if this breakdown gave you something, do 3 things for me before you leave. Tap the like so the algorithm knows conversations with substance deserve oxygen. Share it with somebody who needs the dictionary entry and the history that comes with it. And subscribe with notifications on, because the next case file we are cracking involves another celebrity who thought his camera was his alibi, and fam, what we uncovered makes tonight's story look like the warm-up act. You do not want to be late for that one. Stay safe out there. Protect each other. Listen to the women in your life the first time, not the 3rd time, not the 10th time, and definitely not on the shoulder of a 4 in the morning highway. And remember, a compliment stands on its own or it was never a compliment in the first place. I will see you in the very next one.